This Olympic gold medalist pierced her own lip with no piercing shop, no professional, just a needle, a mirror, and her sister holding her lip open. And now she wants to get licensed to do it for other people too. Alysa Liu is 20 years old. She just stood on the Olympic podium twice at the 2026 Winter Games in Milan, 2 gold medals, women's singles and team program. And while the rest of the figure skating world was still processing what they had just witnessed, people online were zooming in on her smile, trying to figure out what was sparkling between her teeth. That is the thing about Alysa Liu. You come for the skating and you stay for everything else, because everything else is just as extraordinary as the quads and the gold medals and the performances that ended a 24-year American drought. She has been on the radar since she was literally 13 years old, when she became the youngest U.S. ladies figure skating champion in history. Most 13-year-olds are figuring out what to wear to school. Alysa was landing quads in competition and rewriting record books. From that moment on, everyone knew this was not a typical athlete operating within the standard framework of elite figure skating. This was someone moving on a completely different frequency that the sport had simply never encountered before in that specific combination of technical ability and personal identity. The years that followed proved exactly that. She did not just grow up in the sport, she grew into herself loudly and unapologetically, with bleached rings in her hair and a hidden piercing that only appears when she is grinning, which, if you have seen any of her interviews, is basically always. A few months before the 2026 Winter Olympics, Alysa sat down with a local news outlet, and they asked about the little flash of silver that keeps appearing in her smile, and she explained it so casually, so completely unbothered, like it was the most normal thing in the world. She said she pierced it a little over 2 years ago. Her sister held up her lip, she was standing in front of a mirror, she had a piercing needle in her hand, and then she just put it through. No countdown, no dramatic pause, no weeks of psyching herself up or watching tutorials or eventually booking an appointment at a professional studio. Sister holds lip, mirror, needle, done. Moving on. That detail alone tells you more about who she actually is than any press conference answer or promotional interview could, because the entire sequence describes a specific kind of person, someone who identifies what she wants and executes it without requiring a system's permission or a professional's involvement. The piercing itself is called a frenulum piercing. The frenulum is the small, thin piece of tissue connecting the upper lip to the gums, a delicate spot that not everyone even has enough tissue to pierce. And what makes it Alysa's signature is that it is completely invisible unless she smiles wide enough to show her gum line. The moment she does, it catches the light and sits right there between her 2 front teeth like a little secret she is letting you in on, which is exactly why people call it a smiley piercing, because it only exists in the smile. And for someone whose entire public presence is built around being joyful and free and completely herself, a piercing that only appears when she is genuinely happy might be the most on-brand accessory imaginable. In the Get Ready With Me video she filmed ahead of the Vanity Fair Oscar party, she brought the piercing up again and added more context. She mentioned she also did her own helix piercing and her third lobe piercings on herself, and that she has pierced at least one other person too. And now, after doing all of this with no formal training, she's thinking about actually getting professionally licensed. "I actually want to get licensed," she said, just dropped it in between doing her makeup like it was a casual Thursday thought and not a whole career pivot announcement. Think about that for a full second. This is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist who in her free time has been quietly teaching herself to pierce, doing it on her own body, doing it on other people, and is now considering formalizing the skill into an actual credential. She is not dabbling, she is committing. The Olympics were not enough. She wants a piercing license too, and 0 apologies about any of it are being offered, because 0 apologies are required when you are this clear about who you are and what you want.
So much of elite athlete culture is built around singular, narrow focus. The sport is everything, training is everything, identity gets flattened into performance, and the human being underneath the competitive machine gets systematically compressed. And here is Alysa Liu showing up to the Vanity Fair Oscar party with a DIY frenulum piercing and a secondary career interest operating simultaneously. That combination, world-class athletic achievement running in parallel with a completely grounded personal sense of self that has nothing to do with what the sport requires or what the promotional apparatus expects, is the specific quality that makes her cultural crossover feel inevitable rather than manufactured. At the 2026 Winter Olympics, viewers and commentators kept returning to her hair, dark brown with striking bleached white circles wrapped around sections of it, bold and graphic and almost architectural, something a fashion designer might sketch, worn under the Olympic lights while landing jumps and winning gold. She calls them halos, and they are not just decorative. Each bleached ring represents a year. She adds one at the end of every year, a personal timestamp built directly into her appearance as a living visual record of time and intention. She did the first one at the end of 2023, added another in 2024, another in 2025. 3 years, 3 rings sitting in her hair like a timeline you can see from across a competition arena, a history worn on the outside where everyone can read it. When someone asked before the Olympics whether she was going to keep the look for the Games, probably half expecting her to say she would tone it down, go more traditional, play it safe for the most watched figure skating competition in a generation, she said it will be the same. Of course it will be the same. The halos do not just frame her face, they frame her history. You look at her hair, and you are literally looking at years of her life stacked on top of each other. The 2023 halo representing the beginning of the comeback, the 2025 halo representing the final year of preparation before Milan. By the time she stepped onto the Olympic ice with 3 halos in her hair, she had 3 years of intention woven into the look. The rings were growing while she was growing, and the visual record of that growth was visible to every camera in the arena.
The bigger picture of who Alysa Liu actually is at this specific point in her career begins with the question that always follows child prodigies into their adult competitive lives. Once the initial shock of the talent wears off, once they are no longer the youngest, who are they then? Her answer to that question is playing out publicly and in real time across every platform simultaneously. Exactly yourself. More yourself, actually. Louder and more specific, and more committed to the details that make you distinctively you, rather than a compressed version of what the sport prefers its champions to look like. The piercing she did in her mirror is still in her smile. The rings she bleached into her hair are still growing in number. The license she wants to get is apparently still on the table. None of it has been walked back, softened, or managed into something more palatably conventional. None of this is performance. None of it is brand management or image consulting. This is a 20-year-old who knows what she likes and does it, whether that is landing a quad at the Olympics or threading a needle through her own frenulum in a bathroom mirror with her sister holding her lip. You can be taught to skate at the level she skates. Coaches, training programs, decades of disciplined physical development can produce the technical output she demonstrates on ice. But you cannot be taught to be this comfortable in your own skin at 20 years old, under the specific pressure she competes under. The comfort is hers. It was always hers. And the 2 years she spent away from competition between 2022 and 2024 appear to have been the period during which she built the self-knowledge required to return as the version of herself that won double gold in Milan, rather than the version the system had been producing before she left. The smiley piercing only appears when she smiles. The halos only exist because she kept adding to them year after year. And the gold medals only happened because underneath all of it, she is one of the most gifted and disciplined figure skaters the sport has ever produced. All of it is true simultaneously. The needle and the podium, the halos and the gold, the DIY piercings and the historic Olympic performance, the Louis Vuitton front row and the udon before the gold medal skate. None of it cancels any other part, and all of it is the same person. The smiley piercing as a specific object is almost too perfect as a symbol for how she operates in public, hidden by default, only visible in joy, revealing itself when she is genuinely happy rather than performing happiness for an audience that expects it from her. Alysa Liu's public presence works the same way. The depth of who she is and what she carries is not immediately visible in the gold medals or the chart statistics or the Fashion Week invitations. It reveals itself in the specific moments when she is most completely herself. The bathroom mirror piercing session with her sister holding her lip open, the halos she adds one per year as personal timestamps, the licensing ambition she drops between makeup steps like a casual Thursday thought. These are the moments where the person behind the champion is visible. And the person behind the champion is someone operating on exactly the same frequency she was operating on when she landed quads at 13. Someone who identified what she wanted and executed it without waiting for permission from the system she was inside. Just a needle, a mirror, and absolute clarity about who she is.